I feel as though in the self-improvement community, dopamine and motivation have been totally demonized. And I think originally when this message got preached out to everyone, the people preaching this message knew that dopamine and motivation were totally necessary and useful, but just in the phrasings they use, the way they put it, and the terms they coined for certain activities, they made it seem like motivation and dopamine were the villains when they originally did not intend so. So today I hope to clear up any misconceptions you may have about these two, and I'm going to show you why they're absolutely necessary. First of all, let's start with dopamine, because I think a lot of people don't know what dopamine really is. When people hear about dopamine, everybody thinks about reward system. Oh, you take drugs, dopamine. You take alcohol, any substance, use screen time, watch pornography, dopamine release. Right? That's what dopamine is. Dopamine detox, another thing which has, I think, dopamine detox is probably the main thing. That term is what has led to everyone hating on dopamine, and so unjustly so. Because dopamine detox, the name itself is so stupid. And let me explain why. So dopamine has been referred to as the hormone for pleasure. But more than that, it is actually responsible for motivation, happiness, stuff of the sort. So to give you an example, if you had generally higher levels of dopamine in your system, you from day-to-day life will feel more motivated and happier, right? And this is great. So we should want dopamine, right? So why is everyone saying dopamine detox? Well, I'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to show you a study on why dopamine is 100% necessary. They did an experiment with a rat where they basically blocked all dopamine receptors in its brain, which means no dopamine. That's a true dopamine detox per se. That rat was so unmotivated. And by unmotivated, I mean they placed a piece of cheese or some food like in front of it, but just so little that it had to walk forward to reach the food. Because it had no dopamine receptors, it was so unmotivated it couldn't even walk over to the food to feed itself and therefore starved to death. If you want to be like this rat, and if you want to starve to death from a lack of motivation, then go ahead, detox yourself from dopamine. But I don't think that's what you want to do. I think, in fact, you want to have more dopamine. And you're like, this is going to be confusing, but dopamine detoxing is actually about increasing your dopamine, which is really stupid because it's called dopamine detoxing, which means you're getting no dopamine, but you're actually trying to increase your baseline levels of dopamine. So how can this be? Well, you see, when you take a substance of instant gratification, for example, drugs, what happens is your dopamine, let's put dopamine around here. This is your baseline level of dopamine. This is what your dopamine looks like from day to day when you're doing nothing. You take this substance, the dopamine peaks up, like you go, whoa, and then while you're taking the substance, it goes way up, and then after you've taken the substance, it starts to head down, and it has a crash down to here, right? So when before you were over here, now your dopamine level is like below. So what that means is every time you indulge in instant gratification, your baseline levels of dopamine go down, which means your baseline level of happiness and motivation is also going to go down. So when they say dopamine detox, you're detoxing from the things that give you a temporary spike in dopamine and lead to a further greater crash, aka instant gratification, in an attempt to increase baseline dopamine. And so, yes, please spread the word that dopamine detoxing is a terrible name for what dopamine detoxing is. It's more like abstaining from instant gratification to increase baseline dopamine levels. That's really what it is. And so really that's all I want to cover based on that. But I also want to add on with how you can increase your baseline levels of dopamine and therefore your baseline levels of happiness and motivation. There are a few things you can do. Let's go through a few of them because there are many. One is early sunlight viewing. If you view sunlight, real sunlight, not through a window, but actual sunlight, within 30 minutes of waking up, right? So when you wake up, straight away go outside for 10 minutes, look outside at the sun, not directly at the sun. Don't be stupid, okay? Like, yes, but like look up into the sky, as much sunlight as your eyes can get. That's going to be great for your circadian rhythm, going to be great for your sleep, and also going to increase dopamine levels. Another great thing you can do is cold showers. Cold showers can increase your baseline levels of dopamine for hours to come after the cold shower. So that's an absolutely great thing to do as well. If you eat foods that have a lot of tyrosine in it, that's also great. I don't know what tyrosine is to be perfectly frank, but I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist. I know it increases dopamine, and you can just research Google right now what foods are rich in tyrosine and eat those foods. Exercising is also great, which makes sense. Sleep is great. Exercise and sleep, they're great for everything. Just do them. It's going to increase your baseline dopamine as well. And also, don't view bright lights at night. That's a big thing. It's going to, if you view bright lights at night, this includes your phone screen, any sort of source of bright light before going to bed. It's going to be terrible for your sleep, terrible for your dopamine levels. And yeah, those are the main things I have for you. And again, also don't indulge in instant gratification. But I hope this video was helpful. If so, like and subscribe. Consider commenting. And that's all. See you next time.